Okay, ladies and gents. Welcome back. Czapnik. Okay. Excuse me, Matt. Okay, so we missed last week's Parsha, and last week's Parsha is definitely important for this week's Parsha. So I'm going to do a recap and go over some of the points of Parshas Miketz, last week's Parsha, so that we can flow it into this week's Parsha, which is Parshas Vayigash. Are we ready? We're going to have the seatbelt on. So Parshas Miketz is a Chumash Bereshit, book of Genesis. It's page 222 in your handy article Chumash through 249. It has no commandments in it. So the Parsha begins that Yosef was stuck in jail for another 2 years. If you recall from 2 weeks ago, what had happened was he was falsely accused of attempting to seduce his master's wife, the wife of Potiphar, and he was thrown into jail. So, very confusing.
Going that way.
Parsha, did you sign in yet?
I did.
You did. Everybody signed in?
Seven.
So maybe he didn't sign in. What? You can sign in. We don't charge you if you're signing in. Actually, we charge you if you don't sign in. You charge in if we don't sign you. But if you don't charge, and then we sign. Does matter. Everything matters. Very deep Kabbalistic things going on here. Okay. In any event, the paper is resolved. Everything's good now? Good. Thank you very much. All right. So Yosef ends up being in jail for 2 more years. Why? Well, that's why he was in jail.
Because he put too much trust on the Sarah Mashkin.
Right. So what our sages tell us is an interesting idea, which is a very important point, which is he asked
to remember him.
He asked the head waiter, who he had interpreted the dream for, make sure to tell Pharaoh about me, that I don't belong in jail, and let me out. Please mention me. And he said it twice. And Yosef, on Yosef's spiritual level of faith, that wasn't good. He shouldn't have over asked. For us, mere mortals, that would have been fine to try to push to make sure he remembers. But for us, for him, it wasn't. And because of that, he ended up staying an extra 2 years in jail. So this is a very important point, not about the asking or not asking, because like I said, if you're in jail, make every effort to get out. That's important. But what we need to do is have a balance of 2 very important things. One is faith, and the other is effort. You can't say, I'm not going to go to work. I have faith. God will provide. I'll stay at home. I'll wait for the check in the mail. We're not on that spiritual level to be able to do that. There's a rabbi who was very poor, and he refused to accept any help from anybody. So people came up with a very creative idea. You know what they're going to do? On the way to synagogue, he went every morning at a certain time in a certain way. They put the money right in his path. So he should get the money. It's found. It has no signs on it to know whose it is, and he could keep it. And he walks right past it. And everyone's going, ah! And they asked him, what happened? He said, on my way to synagogue, I was thinking about how grateful I am to God that I have such wonderful things, even though it was poor, as poor as a synagogue mouse, like didn't have anything. So I said I wanted to appreciate everything that God did for me. So I said, what would I imagine if I didn't have my sight? And I'm so grateful I have my sight. So when he do that last block where they put the money, he said, I'm going to walk now for a block with my eyes closed. So he didn't get the money. But again, on us mere mortal level, we need a definite balance of faith and effort. And this is a much longer discussion, which we're not going to have now. We need to do both. We have to make our effort. And if it doesn't work out, be able to double check to make sure that I do enough effort. And if I did, then say that, and I guess it wasn't meant to be. So it's a balance of faith and effort. Very important idea. And that evolves. That's going to be different by every person, depending on every subject. All right. And depending on the time of day. But it's a very important idea to have the balance of effort and faith. Clear?
Clear.
Good. All right. Pari has a dream, and he has a dream of 7 fat cows and 7 thin cows, and he wakes up, and what does he do? Goes back to sleep. So that's another longer discussion. How do we interpret dreams? Should we interpret dreams or not? That's another discussion. But Pari, as the king, should have taken the dreams more seriously, and what he did was he went back to sleep. But then he had a second dream with 7 stalks, healthy stalks of wheat and 7 thin stalks of wheat, and he realized something's going on here, and he needs to find out what it means. Excuse me. And he called on his helpers, his soothsayers, and black magic people, and he asked them, what does this all mean? And they gave him all different kind of answers that he did not really like. You're going to have 7 daughters, and 7 daughters are going to die. He didn't like any of them. So the unkind head waiter, who conveniently forgot all about Yosef, he says, uh-oh. And he goes to Pharaoh, says, I have to mention my sins. Me and the head baker were put into jail for sins we committed, and we had a dream there, and Yosef, was a Jewish slave, was in the prison, and he interpreted for us, and exactly what he said happened. The head baker was killed, and I was returned to my post. So when Pharaoh hears this, he says, okay, let's get Yosef out of jail, and let's hear what he has to say. The Rashi teaches us, the commentary teaches us that he was very ungracious. He put Yosef down. He said he was a Jewish slave there, and he interpreted the dream for us like he was very, very not saying, wow, this guy was amazing, he was helpful, he was a nice guy. But Yosef was taken out of jail, and when he's brought to Pharaoh, Pharaoh says, I hear you know how to interpret dreams. So if I was in his situation, I would pull out my card. Dreams are us. Please come ask me whatever you want. I have no problem interpreting dreams. That's not what Yosef said. Yosef said, it's from God. Not up to me. God is the one who helps me interpret the dreams. Pharaoh tells him the dreams, and Yosef interprets it and tells, and this is an important idea, giving credit where credit is due. And he tells him that there's going to be 7 years of great blessing and tremendous bounty, and then going to be 7 hunger years that are going to be so bad that they're going to forget about the good years. And you should hire somebody to be in charge and let them save up the food during the good years, so that during the 7 hunger years, they'll have food. They'll be able to buy food from Pharaoh. And Paro was very impressed with Yosef and said, bingo, you're the man. And he hires him. He changes his name to Tzafnas Paneach, which means reveals what is hidden. And he marries the daughter of Potiphar, but the daughter of Potiphar was not really Potiphar's real daughter. It was an adopted daughter. It actually was a child from Shechem and Dinah. Remember, we learned about Shechem, who had attacked Dinah, and that child was there in Egypt. So that's who he married. And we can now understand Potiphar's wife, because Potiphar's wife was saying, the astrologist said that we're going to have children, my children from my offspring. So Potiphar's wife had a justification for her wanting to seduce Yosef. Said, "Oh, I see in this. It's in the stars. We're meant to be together because from my descendants, your descendants are going to be together." So this is an important idea in a test. When we have a challenging time where we're tested, how do we respond? And the evil inclination loves making the sin a mitzvah, making the thing we're doing wrong as that's the right thing, the best thing to do. What happened? But Yosef resisted her advances. And our sages say a beautiful thing. Since you were able to control your own desires and refrain from touching Potiphar's wife, you were granted rulership of Egypt. Since you refused to listen to her, and thereafter all Egypt will have to listen to you. You left your garments in her hand, although you know you'd be accused of things and slandered and mockery. Therefore, you are now armed with royal garments. You didn't walk to a sinful destination, and therefore you ride in the royal carriage. Your thoughts remain pure, and therefore you are proclaimed a wise man. So again, this concept we talked about, measure for measure, Yosef is rewarded for the difficulty, the real challenge he had of resisting Potiphar's wife's advances. Clear so far? Good? Okay. Yosef gets married, and he has two sons, Menashe and Ephraim. And this is an important idea to realize that our choices have consequences. I mean, let's go back a little bit. Imagine Yosef was bummed because he was stuck in the jail in Egypt. He actually ended up being in jail for 12 years. So he was 10 years in jail, and he sees the head waiter and the head baker are sad. And he could say, you think you have problems? I have problems. And he could have ignored them, and he didn't. And he always made the right choice in this sense, and he was rewarded with that. So that's an important idea that when we make the right choice, there are positive consequences that can come out of it. And God, if we make the wrong choice, there are negative consequences kind of, and we don't always realize that. Imagine had Yosef succumbed to Potiphar's wife's advances, or imagine he didn't help them in the jail. You couldn't tell. The story would have just remained. I mean, I don't know what would have happened. I'm not God to predict. I'm not a prophet, but he could have been stuck in jail for a long time, and that's it, And he wouldn't have think, I wonder what happened. So that's an important idea. So Yosef saves up the abundance during the good years, and the famine strikes the land of Canaan, and Egypt prospers because everyone's coming to pay to buy the food. What's the point of that? God's already planning when the Jewish people will leave that they will have great wealth, because now Pharaoh is getting very wealthy from Egypt. Is getting very wealthy from, excuse me, from all the money that people are paying for the food. Yaakov sends down 10 out of the 12 tribes to purchase the food. Who does he not send down? Binyamin. Why Binyamin? Binyamin was the youngest and his only child that he had from Rachel. So he was protective of him and didn't want to send him down. So he sends down the 10 tribes. They come in separate doors. They shouldn't think it's an army coming. And Yosef recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. So he says to them, oh, you are spies. You're not here to buy food. And he says, spies? We're not spies. We come from a family with a man with 12 sons. One's not around. He has one more son up there. Now, what could it say about Yosef when they come down? Yosef, it could say, and Yosef said, oh, now I'm going to show them. Our time to get my vengeance on them. That's not what Yosef says. Let me read it to you. So listen what it says on page 235, verse 9. Joseph recalled the dreams that he dreamt about them. So he said to them, you are spies. To see the land's nakedness have you come. What's happening here? Why is he saying this about the dreams? What does the dreams have to do with it?
He usually tell them what they're supposed to be doing to him.
Right, but he doesn't say anything like that. But the idea of the dreams means he realized that the dreams are prophecy, and he has to just make it happen to be real. He's not looking to take vengeance on them. That's not what the verse says. He's saying, I remember the dreams himself. I remember the dreams. We got to make it happen. To make it happen, you need to get Binyamin down. So what does he do? He accuses them of being spies, and they deny it. Then he puts them into jail, and then he says, you know what? I'll let you guys go up. I'll leave one of you down here. Take Shimon to stay there. Why Shimon? Because Shimon and Levi together had destroyed Shechem. So he doesn't want them to destroy Mitzrayim, Egypt. So he leaves Shimon in jail while they're there, and he sends them up with the food and bring down Binyamin, and then I'll know that you're not really spies, that your story is true, your story holds up, and you'll be good to go. So they go up, and on the way they realize that the money they paid for the food is in the bags. They're not happy. Excuse me. They're sad. What are we going to do? Now he's going to accuse us of stealing. They come up, they tell Yaakov what happened. Yaakov is distraught. Why'd you tell him that there's a son? Well, he asks us all these questions, and Reuven tries to plead with him to let him take care of Binyamin, and Yaakov says no. But when they start running out of food, Yehuda says, I will be in charge of him, and I will protect him, and I will make sure that we bring Binyamin back up again. So they come down back to Egypt with double money for what they paid. They should have paid. They did pay, but they somehow got back into their sacks for the food that they bought last time, and now new money for the new food with gifts. And they come, and Yosef comes, and he's very happy to see Binyamin, but he contains himself from saying anything. And he says, I have a magical cup that tells me where to sit. And he puts them in order: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. And they're like, whoa, how does he know who's oldest and youngest? They're blown away by it. And they eat together, and he fills up their sacks, and he tells his workers to put the silver goblet that he had into Binyamin's sack. Dum, dum, dum. And they leave, and he sends his guards after them and says, this is how you repay my master's kindness. You steal his cup. I said, we didn't steal a cup. Whoever stole his cup should be killed. The rest of us will be slaves left. And they open up the cup, and they see it's Binyamin. Dum, dum, dum. So they all come back, and Yehuda has nothing to say. He says, we'll all be slaves for you. And Yosef says, no, you guys can go back. I'll just keep Binyamin here. He'll be my slave, and the rest of you can go back. And again, measure for measure, the oral tradition tells us. They hated him, and he did not speak friendly words to them. They made attempts to kill him when he came to Dosan. They cast him into a pit. They sold him as a slave. They caused their fall in Yaakov's by pretending Yosef had been devoured by a wild animal. And that's why these things are happening to them now. So, it's a standoff. What are they going to do now? So just, excuse me, I want to bring a side point in that is important to know, that after a Jew lives, he's brought to the heavenly court. And God, the court will ask him, did you neglect Torah study, which is the primary occupation of every Jew? He says, well, I was very poor, so I couldn't. I was trying to support my family. So they will reply to him, who was poorer than you or Hillel? Hillel was so poor, he gave half of his money away so that he could go into the study hall. If Hillel could do it, why couldn't you? A question about his lack of Torah studying the well-to-do business. And I'm very busy. I was keeping my business going. He says, well, were you as wealthy as Rabbi Elazar ben Chasan? He had thousands of villages and land and ships, but he never knew what they looked like because he didn't want to take time out to inspect his various properties. He just studied. If he could do it, why can't you? A sensuous person asks, who stopped you from learning? He said, well, what could I have done? I was very handsome. I couldn't control my passions. He says, your excuse is unacceptable. Are you more handsome than Yosef? Potiphar's wife attempted him daily, changing the clothes 3 times a day, but nevertheless he overcame his evil inclination. So there's some examples of great people who had the priorities right that we should be inspired by, and that we can't make excuses for why we didn't do what we were supposed to do, because these great people had challenges and they overcame them. So we should learn from them to do the same. All right. So this is a pretty detailed synopsis of last week's portion of Parshas Miketz. And now we are up to Parshas Vayeshev. So what happens? I gave you the Parsha facts, right? So everyone has that? What do you, can you look right in front of you, Tesha? For Vayeshev, Vayigash, Vayigash. What does that say? I gave out Miketz? Yeah. My mistake. Let me see if we have. No, I think we made a mistake. Okay. Gave out Miketz and I should have given out Vayigash. I don't understand why, but it is what it is. I'm sorry. So I don't have it. Okay. All right. So Vayigash is right after Miketz. One second. Maybe I have something right here. I do. Okay. Still Miketz. No, this is all Miketz. I'm sorry. All right. My apologies. Okay. You can. You just did, but now I can ask another one. Yes. Right.
But if Hashem prophesizes, what if it's doing extra? Wouldn't Hashem make it happen without him doing something like intricate like that?
Well, it's a good question. And the simple answer I would give you is so far things didn't work out so well for him the way he was doing. He ended up being sent down the river and really in bad shape. So he had to do something. And also there's another aspect that we have to understand. Part of what Yosef's calculation was to see if they repented for what they did to him. That's a separate, because now he's testing them. You have your youngest brother, who is the other son of Rachel, and now you guys can go out free and dandy, go up to the land of Canaan. Are you going to try to figure out what to do to fight for him? So are you going to sort of rectify the mistake you made with me? So it's a little bit of that too. Good question. Yehuda steps forward. Why Yehuda? Jeopardy music. Because he's the one who said to Yaakov that he's going to guarantee him. So he steps up to bat and does what he has to do. And he says, he recaps the whole story, and Yehuda says, I'm willing to be in his place. I am stronger and more capable servant than Binyamin. Allow me to be in his place. And take Binyamin up and let Binyamin be freed, because that's going to be too hard for Yaakov to have this. Yehuda was willing to give up this world and the world to come. The world to come, by the way, is the world of endless pleasure. The greatest pleasure is to be close to the Almighty, and that's what he was willing to give up. So Yosef is going to talk to them, and he doesn't want to reveal who he is in front of the other people. So he tells all the Egyptians in the room to leave, which was a risk, because obviously they could have done something to him, but he didn't want to embarrass them. And that's an important idea, not to embarrass somebody. And he says, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, Ha'od Avichai, is my father still alive? And the brothers are shell-shocked. They're shell-shocked. And the Gemara says that in Chagiga that Rabbi Eliezer cried when he read this verse. If a man chastises somebody and they have nothing to say, and he was the youngest brother, and he chastises them and they're speechless, what are we going to say after 120 years when God says, no, what did you do for your life spiritually? So he cried when he read this part because he was, you have to take seriously the reprimand. A great story, it's a Hanukkah story that I love. There was this fellow who was a wealthy man traveling, and there's a man before Shabbos carrying his suitcases, and the wealthy man stops his wife and says, would you like to join us for Shabbos? You look like you're a visitor. He says, oh, I would love it. And he invites him to his home, and he gives him a royal Shabbos. And the guest sees that in the break front with a nice silverware and furnishings, that there's a broken bottle. And he says, excuse me, do you mind if I ask why you have a broken bottle in your break front? It doesn't seem to fit. He says, I'll tell you, I was raised religious, and as time went on, my business was expanding, and I started making compromises, and I started making more compromises, and I started not keeping this and not keeping that and not keeping that. And one day I was on the street, and I see a little boy crying, and I say, what happened? He says, oh, what am I going to tell my father? I said, what happened? He says, my father sent me to buy oil for Hanukkah, and he said, come straight home. And I didn't come straight home. I started playing with the kids, and one of the kids broke the bottle of oil, and now I don't have oil, and I'm going to come home. What am I going to tell my father? I'm busted. So the man said, I'm going to give you money, buy a new bottle of oil, and go straight home, and you'll be fine. And the little kid was very grateful. And the man took the broken bottle, and he said, listen to what the boy said. What am I going to tell my father? And I have to say the same thing. What am I going to tell my father in heaven for all the compromises that I made? And that inspired him to return back to Judaism. So he always kept the broken bottle in the break front so that it can remind him, what am I going to tell my father? And that's something we should walk around with. What are we going to tell our Father in heaven after 120 years? A powerful, powerful example. The Chafetz Chaim has, to me, which is one of my most favorite interpretations on this Parsha. A lot of us go through life. Think about it. Think about the story here. Yosef has dreams. He has a colorful coat. He shares the story with them. They don't like it. They send him down to the river. Yaakov mourns them. Safras Paneach is giving them such a hard time. They have to get Binyamin, and they do this, and their father's upset. And what happens? Yosef says two words. Ani Yosef. I am Yosef. What happened at that moment? I have time. What happened at that moment? They had what? Ultimate clarity. They understood the dreams. They understood the colorful code. They understood Yosef coming down to Egypt. They understood Tzavot HaSpana giving them a hard time. Everything was explained. We have issues in our lives, the Holocaust, exile, personal issues, pain. God's going to say in the end of days, Ani Hashem, I am God. And when he does that, what's going to happen? All the questions will be answered. Everything will be clear. Very powerful, powerful thought. And if we can live with faith, that then we don't have to wait for Hashem to say that. We only are living in the time we're in. We don't know all the parts of the past before us, and we don't know the future. But if we understood that Hashem is in charge, and one day Hashem is going to say, I am God. It's very interesting, by the way. In the terrible tragedy of October 7th, Simchas Torah in Israel, and Shemoneh Esrei in our times. So many Israelis are inspired, in spite of the horrific story, they're inspired by how they were saved and miracles that have transpired. It's fascinating because they realize that, all this thing, we've been fighting about politics and this and that and that. You know what? That's not that important anymore. What's really more important is living as a Jew and how we express that. And many people are very motivated to return to traditional Judaism. It's very, very beautiful to see. Yosef is very gracious and warmth, and he says, we're all part of the divine plan. It was meant to be. It was meant to be. And therefore, meant to be is a very difficult thing to think about, because we want it meant to be always good. Everything should come out good, but it doesn't necessarily work that way. There was somebody who I read about, a person had an MRI, and the doctors totally missed the growth that he had. And he realized, like, it doesn't make sense because it was so obvious that it was there, but that was what was meant to be. Another interesting story, and I don't know the details of the story, and I'm not God to say what happened. There was an Israeli soldier that was supposed to be serving in Gaza, and he got permission to leave to go he was doing a big race, a triathlon, and he got killed by a car accident there. And again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you. My guess is that maybe had he gone to Gaza, he would have been killed there. But he was destined to be killed. The question is, how is he going to get killed? Was he killed by trying to defend the Jewish people or being in a race? And that was, again, just a theory. I'm not judging him. I don't know who it was. I don't know what happened. I don't know what is. But I'm just saying there's a divine plan going on, and we have to be cognizant of that and be aware of that. And Yosef cries with Binyamin. That's his full brother, because it's the same father and mother. And interesting, our sages tell us that why do they cry? They cry, Yosef cried for the temple that would be destroyed in this section of Binyamin, and the Mishkan, the temporary temple that would be destroyed in the section of Yosef. They saw it in prophecy. Hello. Pari welcomes Yosef's brothers. He's very excited to hear that they're there, which sounds good. However, Jewish history tells us what? Jews have been welcomed and thrown out of many, many countries around the globe again and again and again. And you don't have to look far. The United States, we're welcomed by many, but a lot of stuff's going on that doesn't make us feel very welcome. And interestingly enough, by the way, El Al is the only airline that's flying to Israel now, because the other ones don't have insurance, whatever. The flights are packed. People are going in droves to visit, to live, to move. So we've been invited by many and thrown out by many. And Yosef tells the Shvatim, please go up and bring Yaakov down to the land of Goshen. It'll be he'll have your own section that they can live. So I can take care of you during the hunger years, because that's what it was the middle of. And exactly that's what happened. They went up. So now the brothers have a little bit of a problem. What's their problem?
Father.
How did they tell the father? Oh, by the way, guess who we bumped into in Egypt? Now, they may not say the whole story, but they don't have to reveal what they did. But so they decided to take Serach, the daughter of Asher, and have her play harp and sing for her grandfather. I don't know the tune. I wasn't there, but I made my own tune. Yosef is still alive, and he's like a king in Egypt. And Yaakov was very touched by this beautiful song, and he blesses her for longevity. And then the Shvatim come in, and they say, guess what? father, the story is true. And Yaakov doesn't believe them. Why doesn't he believe them? So sages tell us somebody who lies, even when he says the truth, is not believed. They lied to him in the past, so he wasn't so sure. But then he says what Yosef told them. What was the last thing that they learned? The Torah thing they learned, the topic that they learned before he went down to Egypt. And when Yaakov heard that, you know what Yosef learned with me last before he was gone 20-something years ago? All right, he's still alive. Let's go down and check it out. So there's an interesting story that's related to this. There was
Egla Rufa? Was it Egla Rufa?
Yes. There's an interesting story. There was a man who unfortunately abandoned his family and vanished. And in those days, not so easy to trace credit cards or emails. Many years go by, and he comes back and he says, "I'm your husband." And she's not sure. She doesn't recognize him anymore. Is it the right one? Is it not the right one? And he wants to be with her, and she's hesitant. And they go to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, "Bring him to synagogue, this guy." And when they come into the synagogue, he asks him, "Where was your seat in the synagogue?" And he goes, I don't know. And he said, "The guy is fake. He must have met your husband, and he asked a lot of information to be able to fake it, but he's not. Because if he doesn't remember where he sat in the synagogue, that indicates that he wasn't there." So here too, Yosef is telling them what he learned. So that to Yaakov is more of an indication. But there's something deeper going on there. Yosef is still alive. But what does that mean? Is he physically alive? Or is he spiritually alive?
Well,
So when they told him that, when they tell him what the last thing that he learned from his father, that alleviates his fear because he sees that Yosef is still connected to Judaism. I know of a woman that she wasn't raised religious and was working at a photo shoot for some modeling agency, and they wanted a shot of the model Friday afternoon by the ocean with the sunset behind her. And they were trying to get the right angle and this and that. And the makeup artist says, "Sorry, I gotta go. Shabbos is coming." And she was livid. Said, "What do you mean you're going?" It says, "Yeah, sorry, it's taking too long." And she left. And she left her a card, said, "If you want to find out more about Judaism, do this learning." Eventually, she got involved with the Jewish Learning Exchange with Rabbi Kurzner, blessed memory, a very special, holy man who was deep thinker. And she became religious. And she shared with me a story that was very interesting. She shared with me that her grandmother lived in Europe, and they had a daughter that very much wanted to go to America to try. They were living in poverty. She wanted to try. So reluctantly, the mother let her go. And then the rumbling of World War II was happening. And the daughter came back to get her mother and kids to move with her back to America. But when she saw how the daughter dressed and how she was behaving, that she wasn't religious anymore, she said, "Never mind, I'll take my chances here. I'm not going to America to lose my Judaism," which was unfortunately a very common thing in those days, especially. And she left, and she ended up not making it. So I told the granddaughter, "You think that it was the card from the class, that's part of it. But part of it was your grandmother willing to sacrifice to maintain her Judaism. That was the merit that kept you alive and brought you back to Judaism as well." So being physically alive is great, but Yaakov wanted more, and he saw that Yosef was still alive because he still remembered what he was taught. That inspired him to go down to visit him. And Yehuda is sent down to Egypt first. To do what? And the answer is, he's sent down to Egypt to open up a yeshiva, a place of Torah learning. Now, what would you think would be the first thing you open up when you move to a Jewish neighborhood? Maybe a kosher pizza store, maybe a sushi place, maybe a synagogue. Nope. A place of Torah learning. That's the priority. That's what makes it work. That's where the future of the Jewish people are in the Torah study. And the other stuff, the kosher pizza store and the sushi store, that could come afterwards. A Chinese restaurant. I apologize for not bringing that up. But that it's a very powerful idea. There is, many. I grew up in a little shul in an apartment that had benches with nails sticking out of them. And I wonder if they bought the benches with the nails officially sticking out of them. You know what I'm saying? The externals of the shul weren't that important at that time. The main thing is a place to pray, and more importantly, a place to study Torah. Now, Baruch Hashem, in Jayli has a beautiful shul, and there are many beautiful shuls around the world. But at that time, that was the priority. But the priority always has to be able to study Torah, because that's the thing that really keeps Judaism alive. And Yaakov is told by Hashem, go down to Egypt, and I will be with you, and one day your offspring will come out. And Yaakov goes down with 70 descendants, and Yaakov and Yosef meet in Goshen, and Yaakov says Shema. He says Shema, which is an interesting thing. Why at that moment did he say Shema? What's the opening line of Shema? V'yahavta es Hashem Elokecha. You should love God b'chol levavcha, with all of your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all of your soul, b'chol meidecha, with all of your assets. What did Yaakov feel at that moment when he saw Yosef after all these years?
Yeah.
This love, tremendous love. So he wanted to channel that love not only for Yosef but also to God. So that's why he said Shema. And Yaakov meets Paroi, and Yaakov complains a little bit about how challenging his life was, and because of that, Yaakov's life was shortened. But it ended up being that he lives in Goshen, and that's where the Jewish people are beginning to live. And this is the beginning of the exile of going into Egypt, the first exile that the Jewish people had to face. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, and comments? Please. Yes.
One of your child, you kind of expect that the citizens are going to be excited or jealous.
Right.
Kind of developing those feelings.
Right. Well,
Understand, like,
well, you have to understand something else that I'll give you a deeper insight. So did everyone on Zoom hear the question? Did you hear this question on Zoom?
No.
The question was, why did Yaakov give preferential treatment to Yosef if it ended up causing a lot of jealousy? Why did Yaakov give preferential treatment to Yosef when it caused a lot of jealousy?
I mean, he didn't do it with the intention of causing jealousy.
That's correct.
He loved him more, but it doesn't mean.
Like he gave him a colorful coat and he spent extra time learning with him, right? So on one hand, you are correct. Our sages tell us don't show preferential treatment to one over the other.
But you're also supposed to like raise a child in the derech that he needs to be raised, and maybe that's what Yosef needed, and Yaakov knew that.
Okay.
And like it's up to his brothers to decide, like, oh, they're jealous over it or not. Like,
So I'm going to give you a deeper understanding, which is, you're correct, Connie, but I just want to throw out something else. If you recall, going back a little bit, what was Esav's job initially? He should be what? This world, be in charge of this world, physical world, and Yaakov would be in charge of spiritual. Esav didn't like the deal, and Yaakov ended up having both. Yosef is the one who's the antithesis of Esav. He's going to be the viceroy, but maintain his Jewish values. He's going to be the one that they have to bow down to, but maintain his Jewish values. And Yosef is going to be the our sages say that Esav was like straw and Yosef was like the spark. He could one thing from his hammer, the spark goes and burns up all what Esav is. Yosef is the one who is able to do both. He could be spiritual and physical at the same time. He's a viceroy, but he didn't compromise on his values. And that's part of what Yaakov was doing. He was grooming Yosef for the elevated role of being in the world and still maintaining holiness. And that's a challenge, a very big challenge. Yeah, Tisha.
That require a compromise, not a compromise, a negotiation.
Well, that's an excellent question. It does require working on how to do it, but compromise isn't the right word because a person needs to figure out how to maintain their values in spite of the challenges. There's a story about this man who was a businessman who was trying to get a big deal, and the guy looks at his watch and says, "Excuse me, I know we're in the middle of this very big deal, but I have to do afternoon services now, so I need another room to pray." I says, "What? We're in the middle of these meetings. Sorry, gotta go." And in the end, the guy was very impressed that the guy had the values to be able to pray. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it would work out. Sometimes guys be insulted and forget the deal, which is, well, the guy was okay with that too. But so it's an important idea, though, that can we do both? And the answer is properly we can, but it takes strength and perseverance. I mean, there's a whole story which I'm not going to get into now, but basically there was this Korean diplomat whose daughter wanted to have a place to work in, and some religious man had a large company and he hired her, and this Korean diplomat was like blown away that her daughter, like, he was afraid she could be in New York, Manhattan by herself. What does this mean? How she could be? And she said she loved working for the Orthodox people. Every day the people would come in for afternoon services in the office, and she was treated respectfully. And the Korean diplomat decided to find out, why is the Korean government always vote against Israel? And he changed the vote. And he said, they're good people. The Jews are good people. The story has more drama to it than I'm saying because it's late. But he invited him to go out to eat to a kosher restaurant, and it was a whole thing. Michelle, is that a stairway to heaven that you have behind you?
Oh, ooh,
What?
I'm in the video. I didn't even realize.
Oh my
It's just
gosh!
a
Don't
picture.
worry, your nose is on
It's just a-
perfectly. Don't worry.
It's just a picture.
I know. I thought it was the stairway to heaven. I was really getting inspired. But in any event, be that as it may, it's not easy, but it can be done. And a person, I know somebody who, powerful story. Again, I'm not going to do it justice. He's a lawyer for a major entertainment firm, and they were negotiating a very big deal Friday afternoon, and he had to go because it's Shabbos. and his boss offered him an exorbitant amount of money if he stayed just this one time. I was insulted. You think I'm going to sacrifice my Shabbos for money? No. And he left. And it's, you know, it was a big deal. It's a big deal. So we have the ability to do that. It's not always easy, but we have the ability to do that. I know somebody who works for a printer in Lakewood, New Jersey, religious company. And when the war started, the owner said, as a merit for the soldiers and the Jewish people in Israel, we're going to close the office at midday on Friday. That's it. Everyone will go home early. They can prepare for Shabbos properly. Beautiful. Just a beautiful, beautiful idea. So the idea of compromises, we have to work very hard not to make a compromise, but to maintain our values. And yes, it's very important to ask Jewish law questions. How do I deal with X, Y, and Z? You know, like these are not easy issues, but it's important that they be asked so that you know how to deal with it. I'll give you an example, just unrelated but related. I had a woman who said to me, my ex, whatever, my relative is graduating, and they expect me to be there at the graduation, and it's Saturday night, and I can't be there, it's far away because Shabbos. So I said, why can't you be there? To get there on time, I have to drive there on Shabbos. I said, no, you're not going to drive on Shabbos, but you can go to a hotel nearby, get Shabbos food, get your Torah books, and spend an uncomfortable Shabbos in the hotel and walk over afterwards, right when Shabbos is over, to say congratulations. She said, but my Shabbos is going to be lousy. I said, yes, but for family, for peace, you're going to do that. That's fine. So again, you have to have a good rabbi who you can ask questions to know how to navigate the compromises or not compromises that you have. But good questions. Anybody else?
Yeah, I don't understand how your answer about the being like grooming Yosef answers the question of why did Yaakov do that?
Well, you answered it. Every child needs something else.
Okay, so I wasn't. All right.
Yeah. It's very interesting. What did Yaakov teach Yosef? What he learned in Shem and Aver, not what he learned from his father Yitzchak. What he learned from Shem and Aver. That's when he spent years there before he went to Lavan. He was always prepping him for greatness in the secular world while maintaining his values.
Mm.
Does that make sense, Connie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but so it's
no.
so it doesn't
Again,
answer
the sages do take him to
yeah.
task. They feel that Yaakov
Right.
made a mistake by being so overt about it.
Okay.
That is correct, but we have to give every child what they need, and sometimes, you know, a child needs X and the other child needs Y, and it doesn't have to be exactly even.
Right.
Yes.
So Yaakov almost knew that Yosef was going to have this like position. I don't know if it was Ruach HaKodesh, but he was grooming him for that. So in a way, like, why was he actually so surprised? Yeah. Because
he thought he was dead. But if you remember when he said his second dream, Yaakov poo-pooed it, but inside the verse says, but Yaakov is wondering, there's some truth to that. So, but again, he looked at the circumstances. It looked like he had been killed. Roy, a question.
Right.
Is it because Yosef was Rachel's son and he wanted to honor?
No,
Rachel that way?
I don't think so. I think it had to do with the role that Yosef had. I don't think it was honoring Rachel. I mean, that's partially Rachel. He would have been the Bechor, the firstborn, had Rachel been the one who he married first.
In the Torah, it seems like the siblings always have some kind of, not strife, but you don't see them like being so close or getting along.
Hang in there. We're coming next week to Ephraim and Menashe. Next 2 weeks to Ephraim and Menashe. So that's a good example of that they did get to.
Our children, but like if I own personal life, the kids are different, and I treated them different based on their.
And that's fine.
ability.
It doesn't.
My daughter didn't like that because she was like, you expect me to do this in such ways, you don't expect it from my brother, so to raise somebody.
But you know what? That's what Connie said. We're supposed to raise each child according to his way. Every child is different. I said this before when my kids were upset. How come the girls don't have to go to school on Sunday? We do. I said, well, if you put on a dress and you join the girls' school, I'll let you go. Because you're a boy and you go to the school on Sundays. That's the way it is. That's it. there's a very interesting idea, which I use in a different context, but I'll use it in this context as well. Imagine someone walks in and says, I'm going to give you $1,000 to share with everybody in this room. Don't get excited. No one did that yet. I'm just letting you know. But I give you $1,000 for everybody in the room, and I want it to be shared equally. So what would that mean? Well, that's equally is divide up by the amount of people and do that in 2,000. That's it. What if you said, I want everyone to share $1,000 fairly? That's
Yeah, you look at
ready. That's
their
a different story.
expenses.
And by the way, I am saying this example to all of you on Zoom that you should show up. But in any event, just to put a little pressure there. But fairly is a totally different.
Really? Every week? Fly? Come on.
Why
I'll
not?
take a...
You can move here. You can move here.
I have plans to make Aliyah, Rabbi Czapnik. I didn't tell you.
Good,
Yes,
Hashem
Hashem.
should help. So fairly, well, it depends. This one has a family. This one is independently wealthy. This one has a great job. This one doesn't have such a great job. Fairly is going to have a wholly different thing. So, excuse me, that's an important idea that we need to be aware of, to raise our children, God willing, fairly, not necessarily equally. Okay, and
That's the whole problem with the feminist movement and all these other crazy movements that don't appreciate like what each person has to offer.
uniqueness
Like-
of each person. That is correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Yes.
Things that are meant to be.
Yes.
Persuade shall we feel about the death of these 3 hostages in the hands of friendly fire.
Look, it's a terrible story, but the truth of the matter is, it's surprising that Hashem should continue to help more that didn't happen. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in a fire zone. You're in it's a terrible tragedy from all ends, no matter how you slice it. But you're in a fire zone, and you don't have the luxury of, let's contemplate, what should we do now? Should we shoot now, not shoot now? And I don't know what Hamas did in the past, some of the stuff they set up to be similar to that, It's very sad, there's nothing do we say it was meant to be? Yes, on some level it must be meant to be, but it's a very sad story. And
I mean, they said Hamas was taking these dolls and putting loudspeakers with crying babies to lure them in words of Hebrew. It's like, it's so hard to distinguish. I feel for the soldiers, and you know what I really feel for? The soldiers who made that accidental fire, the amount of guilt that they must be feeling.
yeah,
Hashem
sure,
Yishmar, it must be awful.
100%.
And we don't have to be the ones to like overly indulge that guilt and make them feel even worse than they're already feeling.
I don't judge them at all.
Yeah.
It's not our place to judge. We should be, they're in the firing line and they're doing what they have to do. And no, it's just so interesting. What's the Jewish response?
Though we understand what the circumstances were, and that it boiled down to a millisecond of decision making, and may have been based on the 2 ambushes that had happened that killed the Israeli soldiers
Right.
the day before. How still do
We can only pray for their families and for the soldiers. Hamas is not pounding their chests for the missiles that they fire that kill their own people. You don't see them getting up, oh, we're so sorry it happened. The Jews do that. So.
And immediately.
Yeah.
It's not like we try to cover it up. It's,
Right, they took responsibility. That's it.
They escaped some reason.
We don't know if they escaped or if Hamas just pulled back. We don't know what happened exactly. I don't know what happened. But it is what it is. But Shem should protect them all. That's all. Bring everybody home. That's all. Everyone who's not well should feel better. But these things
yes,
do
refuah
happen
shalema
anymore.
to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Hashem should help. All right. Anything else? Any thoughts, questions, comments? All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you.
You
Take
too,
care.
Rabbi Czapnik.
Best.
For Shalema.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Are you taking anything? Is it a viral thing?
I have no idea. I was doing stuff and then I got better and now I got a different thing. I don't know. I didn't know what I'm doing yet.
It sounds like a post-viral bronchitis type of thing.
Could
where it
be.
just needs, yeah.
Be.
It's very common. Okay, be well.
Well,
Feel
okay.
better, Rabbi.
Thank you.
You're welcome, bracha. Feel good, bracha. Come for simchas, bracha.
Okay, amen.
Honey, how's your work going? Okay.
It's okay. It's nothing too crazy. I mean, it is what it is, you know, it's a temporary thing. I don't think I'm gonna make any changes before I make Aliyah, but we'll see.
All right. Hashem should help. All to get best.
Yeah.
Much.
Now I just have to get all my documents together. So.
Yeah, using the
Nefesh b'nefesh.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, why
Okay.
wouldn't I?
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Hatzlacha.
Thank you.
All right, keep in touch. Take care. All
Okay.
the best.
Bye.
Bye. Take care, Lisheva. Take care, David. All the best. Take care. All the best.